8:15 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Adrian with you and Eoin Sheahan. Very good morning to you, Eoin.
Very good morning, Adrian. How are you?
You still look as if you're a bit shook from last weekend.
Wow, okay.
Sadness in the eyes, Eoin.
Well, there's always sadness in my eyes, Adrian, especially on a Friday morning.
Wow. Deep for this time of the morning. Something you want to get into, or?
No, it's okay.
You sure?
No, it's just the Friday blues. Monday to Thursday, it all goes so
Friday
swimmingly,
blues?
and then Friday, just for some reason, I'm just never that happy at 7:45 on a Friday.
Wow, the Friday blues was not a thing I understood to exist.
Well, it exists in this studio, Adrian.
I feel that I have a part in that, and for that I can only apologise.
No, I'm
absolutely nothing.
I'm sure you're feeling the Friday blues this morning after your sojourn down in Limerick yesterday and the trek back up.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it was a tough gig. No, it was a really good gig last night down in Limerick. For people who aren't aware, I'm sure everybody's all over it at this point, and the footage, the carnage, a lot of carnage exists on the Off the Ball social channel, so check that out there. But Ronan O'Gara was alongside Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood in Limerick last night, and Nathan holding the show. Yeah, that was probably not today or yesterday, those two young bucks. But yeah, he managed to drop a lot of F-bombs at the Rog last night, and one C-bomb as well, just for good measure. So that's what happened in the concert hall in Limerick last night, yeah. He's
put himself straight into the Radio Broadcasting Hall of Fame with a C-bomb. Because I certainly can't name off the top of my head the last time a C-bomb was actually dropped, even on an online show like this. But let alone on the radio. So fair play to him. I'm sure it was premeditated, and he was like, "This is going to get me." I see Tommy Welch has got a PPI last week. I'm going to get myself one of them by going into the Radio Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if that was quite the case. He did, I think, at some point just after the go, "Oh, are we on the radio?" So I don't know if there was the full awareness of that. It was Brian's laughing non-stop for 2 or 3 minutes afterwards, and that was actually almost more so the highlight.
Yeah, it was. It was excellent. You were obviously on stage as well.
I was at the end, yeah. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. How did you find that experience?
I got my question wrong, so I actually got it right, but the buzzer had gone, so...
Right, that's a shame. Were you fluffing the crowd or anything beforehand?
Yeah, there were a lot of people sort of saying that went down really well, actually. That
Do you want to give us a joke or two here this morning? Yeah,
so I went on stage, so I was in Limerick, Munster crowd. I went on stage and said, the usual kind of, "Anybody here from Munster?" And I got a bit of a lukewarm, like, "Anybody here from Munster?" And then I gave it a good old roar. And I said, "Listen, I have an admission to make. I'm sorry, I'm from Leinster." And
even though you're from
I got a bit of I'm not actually, I'm actually from Leinster. And I got a bit of a tepid sort of a boo. And then I said, look, I apologise for that, but I have brought my little friend with me, and I pointed to the Heineken Cup, which went down like like a lead balloon.
That was actually a good idea. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than that. So yeah, that's we should actually get ratings in from people as to how do you rate Adrian's.
No, look, a
gambit.
lot of people reflecting very fondly on Owen. That's really all we need to know. That's the main takeaway.
Well, I would have enjoyed it if I was there. I would have laughed.
You would have done sympathy laugh. Right, here is what's coming up on the show today. It's a busy one for you. It's a bloody hectic weekend of sport. So we're going to get stuck into the back pages very shortly and let you know what's going on across the newspapers this morning. We're going to talk Ireland versus Denmark with Rasmus Dam Nielsen, the Danish football / crime writer. That's coming your way in just a little bit. We're going to get the inside line on Denmark. We might even end up talking about politics. Let's see how we go. The sports news with Darren Cleary, so that'll be just a bit of a preview of what's coming up at the weekend. We're going to get a flavour of what went on in Limerick last night with Ronan O'Gara, and we're going to talk Champions Cup. We have Charlie Morgan, the English football writer from The Telegraph, joining us on the line for that, and Alan Quinlan, as always, on a Friday is going to join us. We do have tickets to give away as well, so get your comments coming in. Give you details of those shortly, but get your comments coming in. It'll be the best comment of the morning that's going to get those on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter and all of that good stuff. Delighted to have you with us. Time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
All right, we're going to kick off with the back page of the Irish Independent this morning, which the main story here is about the draw for the All-Ireland Championships, and it's Dubs on the road again as Mayo and Galway are kept apart. So this is the story that Dublin are going to take on Wexford or Louth in their opening gambit, and on the road as well in the Leinster Championship. Were you excited about that?
No.
Really?
I'm literally, that's the first I've seen of it. I saw some mention of
It's
Louth.
on most of the back pages.
I didn't see any Dublin players being brought in front of the media yesterday to say, a trip to Drogheda, that'll be a very, very tough encounter. Much like what is now the most famous moment in the history of championship draws, which was Johnny Cooper 2 years ago saying Carlow will be a tough match. which has obviously lived in infamy. In fairness, he ended up being kind of half right.
No easy games at inter-county level anymore.
Well, yeah, like that Carlow match was probably the toughest Leinster Championship game Dublin have had in the last 5 years. So fair play to him on that one. But so I would take everybody at face value in terms of what they said last night. But to be honest with you, couldn't care less.
Look,
the draws are shite anyway. Like all the Ulster teams, basically, Monaghan's got the easy side of the draw. Mayo and Galway have kept apart from each other. Tip and Cork has won semi-final. Kerry are on the other side. Who cares?
There is a little bit of that. Let's say no more about it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we can have a conversation. I can get into all. We can have a really bad conversation about this, or we can gloss over it.
Shane Long boost for Ireland mission is the other story here. You can see the nice shot of him there at the Benetti menswear launch yesterday, looking pretty sharp. But that he is fit for Ireland, so this is a bit of a boost because we don't have too many strikers, clearly, and we'll take all of that's gone.
I wonder, is it only now that we're starting to really appreciate Robbie Keane? Like, obviously at the time, everybody, like the pundits and people who played alongside him were made this plea for appreciation, saying you have to really you have to sit back and just admire what Robbie Keane has done. We are not going to have a striker like this again, potentially, certainly not for decades, really. Somebody that prolific, somebody who made something very difficult look quite easy, which was being in the right place at the right time for a lot of his goals, but also his range of finishing was outstanding. If we had Robbie Keane in our squad right now, like coming so close to the World Cup as we did, would we have qualified? Who knows? With like a Robbie Keane in his pomp. Now the counter argument to that is Robbie Keane only qualified for one major tournament himself. So, like, I really do think I know that that's one department that we're lacking hugely at the moment, but I just think that it's only now that we're like, God, wasn't it great to have a goal scorer like that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's full, like, I don't know. I know, I get your point, but like, we're only appreciating him because we don't have a striker at the minute, as opposed to appreciating him for being what he was, which was an amazing goal scorer.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I do think if we did have a decent striker at the moment who was even on regularly okay form with their club, I think we'd still be saying to ourselves that stratospheric level that Robbie Keane got to in terms of prolific goal scoring would still not be reached. It's obviously compounded now with the fact that we're going through a bit of striker woe at the moment, and like hopefully I'd like to think that Shane Long will find his groove again before his career is out.
And like, he's the sort of player, even if he's not banging in goals, he will bring in other players around him, like in those forward positions. Just one more, as Owen said, the draws are shite and we're not going to bang on about it, but one interesting line that stood out for me this morning here: Daily Coy on Dub's return but refusing to rule it out. It's tucked away inside a lot of these newspapers, but it's really great stuff. He was in front of the media yesterday talking about the possibility that he might go back to Dublin, and obviously it's on vogue at the minute with some managers going back to areas they've been before. He's obviously in charge of Chemical Crokes at the minute. They've a Dublin hurling final to look forward to, so he is very focused on that. But the quote that jumped out for me this morning, Owen, was that if it's the right thing to do and you want to do it, i.e. going back to the county you've been with before, and there's no disgruntlement among the players that you're going back, pointing out stories about people who didn't do it when they were back. Sure, Jesus, if Lucknow went back in the morning, he'd do a job.
Yeah, it's like himself, and like he is one of the kings at being coy. He just kind of has that great way about him where he can laugh off any suggestion, and it doesn't even look like he's laughing it off, because that's just the way Anthony Daly is.
You've forgotten, by the time you get to the end of his answer, you've forgotten what you were talking about. You just get lost in this amazing his amazing capacity to communicate.
Yeah, 100%. He's interested, is what I'm reading here. As in, very interested. As in, Matty Kenny is looking around and it's like, oh no, this was supposed to be my job. Now, Matty Kenny, of course, had the opportunity to really kind of push the public agenda last weekend, and he said it was disrespectful that he was asked about it, which I thought was quite a weird comment to make.
Well, it was Matty Kenny versus Anthony Daly in the Dublin Championship, and Daly got the better of it. But I mean, it's not, Matty Kenny has done some stuff.
You're a hurling manager, you just been knocked out of the championship. I mean, okay, fair play, this is a big deal that you got knocked out, fair play to the opposition and all that, but it's not really a weird question to ask if you're interested in an inter-county job. In fact, it's actually the question that should be asked. So I thought that was a strange development. If he had said at that point that I would be sort of interested in the job, we'll see what happens, it's like, well, let's actually take this on a bit further. And granted, the public agenda is totally different to what's actually going on in Dublin GAA right now, but certainly from what I can see over the last week, it's like those two little horses in the amusement park, and Anthony Daly's horse is just taking a little bit of a head.
That's my favourite game.
It is, yeah. I think it's everybody's favourite game.
The one with the balls, like.
The balls, yeah.
Oh, Love that game. As long as Anthony Daly's involved in public life in some regard, I'm fine. Like whether that's
Sunday game or
as a pundit or in management, just continue to do something. That's, can't be paid enough money to do whatever it is he's doing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We need more Anthony Daly, and we've got a lot of him at the moment in punditry, but I think punditry is where you get peak Anthony Daly, because...
You probably do. He's a bit more free to be Anthony Daly.
Yeah, 100%. That being said, would we reach a peak Anthony Daly that we've never seen before if he went back to Dublin and won an All-Ireland with them? Like, imagine that post-match interview with Anthony Daly as an All-Ireland winning manager. That would be one of the best pieces of content ever.
There's a lot of imagining there. I don't know that they're ever going to win an All-Ireland.
I can already see this clip being played back in black and white.
Yeah, right. The Irish Times this morning, it's rugby all the way here, and reflections on Leinster, of course, who opened their Heineken Champions Cup account this evening. 4-time champions Leinster looking healthy and hungry, writes Jerry Thornley here. A host of big names return as Cullen makes 9 changes from the win over Munster. And what a team it looks as well. On paper, that Leinster team look absolutely phenomenal, and some of the players who haven't even made the squad, it's absolutely incredible. So we're going to get into more of that with Quinny a little bit later on. Lure of the All Black jersey, no longer enough for Sapawanga, is the theme here for Johnny Watterson as well. This is ahead of the that Leinster Wasp game as well. So that's kind of rugby pretty much all the way on the Irish Times this morning. In the Irish Examiner, it's rugby as well here. The one to beat is the picture of Johnny Sexton. Leinster kick off defensive European Cup. Munster gear up for early Exeter exam. It's a bloody nice Leinster jersey, that.
Show me that again. Oh, that is class,
isn't it?
I haven't seen that. Have they worn that?
The new sort of away. It might even, I may be mistaken, but it might even be a third kit. With a third kit,
might be the third kit, because they have that camo kit and they have that just regular navy kit, which they wore last week, and then that must be either a second or third kit. Yeah, that is nice. That is nice. And also then you have Shane Duffy urging Declan Rice to go with his heart. Like it is unfortunate, and for Declan Rice and for all the players who are going to get asked about it between now and Kingdom Come, or at least until he decides whether he's English or Irish. It's going to dominate the newspapers when all these games come up, because a new player is going to be put in front of the media, and that player is going to be asked about whether Declan Rice should make up his mind or not. And it's Shane Duffy on this occasion who's urging Declan Rice to go with his heart. Yeah, it's not going to be resolved either before the next international break, you'd assume. So that's whatever, 2-3 more matches where press is done in the lead up to it, and it is like flogging a dead horse at this point. We will have a decision before the end of the year. That's what we've been told. Which way that decision is going to go now, it seems that you asked me 10 days ago and it's like definitely England. You ask me now and it's like, well, there's a life possibility that Ireland might be back in the mix. Shane Duffy, of course, had to make his own decision about 10 years ago at this point, so he's well placed to talk about it. But like, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because you've got to keep asking the question, but the answer has to always be the same. Anybody who says that it's not up to him to make his own decision, or you can understand why he's taking time over it, like, I think there is a correct answer to the question. So you're getting the same answers from different people to the same question, but the question has to be asked. So it's just a constant cycle of repetition.
He was up in front of the media during the week, and this is obviously ahead of the upcoming couple of games, Denmark and Wales. And this one here was sort of jumped out for me. A couple of bad results don't make you a bad team, which is a statement of fact. Now, we've had a lot of bad results over a long period of time. You could argue, obviously, that the Denmark game at the back end of last year, if that gone a different way, then actually we'd have been absolutely fine, obviously. But, it didn't. And, I mean, I don't know. We're certainly not a great team. Are we even a good team? We're probably not even a good team, really.
Well, that kind of goes back to the Martin O'Neill idea that himself and Roy Keane have helped Ireland to overachieve in their tenure. Now, looking at kind of the injury reports, particularly from Wales and Denmark over the last couple of days, I've got a sneaking suspicion that we could come away from this with 6 points.
Based on two very specific reasons.
On two very specific reasons, and it's completely fine to get ahead of yourself because of these two very specific reasons. One is that Christian Eriksen is definitely going to miss the Denmark game. The other one is that, listening to Ryan Giggs last night, Gareth Bale is probably going to be absent from Tuesday night's squad against Ireland. Now, like, if Ireland had somebody of Gareth Bale and Christian Eriksen's ability, we would have qualified for the World Cup. We probably would have got to the last 16 in the World Cup. International football can hinge on one player like that. International football is nothing in comparison to club football. One of those world-class players can make you appear like a world-class team. And when I say world-class team, I mean top 16 in the world. Like, Denmark got there last year, and if you take Christian Eriksen out of the team, Denmark Are they much better than Ireland?
Probably
are they even better than Ireland?
Well, they probably are, but probably not that much better.
Not that much better. Like, that's how much one player can completely change the quality of a side.
And the two players that you're talking about there are obviously also in key kind of positions, and it gets me wondering if, I mean, our best player, whether, you know, he's better transplanted into another place, another area of the pitch to almost better influence the team.
Well, that's it. The other key thing here is that not only is this key player the rocket fuel that propels you to whatever, Wales beating Belgium in the Euros, or Denmark narrowly crashing out, almost getting to a World Cup quarter-final this summer. It's also the life support machine that you depend on, that they're looking to this inspiration constantly. It's get Christian Eriksen the ball. We saw it in Dublin last year, where he was literally a 10 out of 10 performer. Like, if you like the whoscored.com, if you go onto that, breaks down all the statistics into minute details. He was a 10 out of 10 performer, which you very rarely see on that website. They just basically funneled everything through Christian Eriksen. Wales, maybe to a lesser extent, but they do it the same way against Gareth Bale. He was impressive against us last month. He still probably would have lost that game now, but he was very, very impressive against us last month. So when you pull that out of the team, not only are you losing the rocket fuel, you're losing the basic ability to function, I would say, where the reliance on the player is totally shown up. Look at Wales last night. The Sergio Ramos goal.
You did look at Wales last night.
I did. I watched the full game last night.
Fair play to you, like, for a start.
And I listened off the ball, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. And watched it because it was being live streamed.
Of course, yeah. How could I forget? But other than that, I was watching Wales against Spain last night. And it's so stark to not only notice how noticeable the absence of Gareth Bale was in terms of the spark that he gives a team, but also the sort of base that they then revert to. Like, you look at Sergio Ramos' goal last night, and they forgot the basic art of defending a set piece. Like, the replay shows Sergio Ramos standing there. The Wales player in front of him is about from me to you. The Wales player behind him is from me to you as well, but in the opposite direction. And everybody's just looking around. Sergio Ramos is totally free. He's kind of like twiddling his thumbs. He's like, when is the Wales player going to come and mark me? The ball comes in from a free kick. He's looking around. Still nobody marking me. 2 yards out from goal. Heads into the back of the net. To call it schoolboy defending would actually be an insult to schoolboys. It was one of the worst pieces of defending I've ever seen from an indirect free kick. Now, what is Ireland's one and only strength?
Well, absolutely. Yeah,
it's attacking set pieces.
And that Shane Duffy is central to that.
Yes. Like, you just pull the heart out of a team. Like, the umbilical cord is completely cut. It's like your first day at school going into a game without Christian Eriksen or Gareth Bale, except all your schoolmates are like old lads with beards and they're smoking out the back of the school. It's like completely different. You're totally into the deep end. And
I don't know where that analogy is going.
I would be quite fearful from a Denmark and Wales perspective. Yeah. The only thing is that we are not very good. I think from their perspective, we can be very quietly confident that we can get 6 points from these games.
Yeah.
The only thing is we need to go out there and do it and maybe have that confidence, especially at home, to play a bit of football and get those goals. But, hey, I'm confident for Shane Duffy being in the box against the Welsh on Tuesday night for sure. The Danish, though, are a little bit better at defending set pieces.
Yeah, they are, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how a team who, like you say, when that umbilical cord is pulled out of them, sort of, particularly when it's only over a couple of games, like he's in a remarkable record. It was whatever it was, like 15 goals in 17 competitive games and 5 assists over the same period. Like, his stats are bloody incredible, and he's clearly an incredible player. But I wonder, when it's just over a short period of time, whether the rest of the group have the capacity to actually draw themselves up to a level that gets them by, even over that. Like, that isn't a long-term plan. Because I mean, even reading Thomas Delaney's quotes this week, he's they're talking about Eriksen not being there. So what are you going to do? It's very much a case of we don't know who to give the ball to. Like, we just get the ball and we give it to him, and that's what we do.
Yeah, like, everybody's bar is raised when Christian Eriksen is on the pitch. The way he just enabled, like, Pione Sisto, I'm sure you remember, was absolutely brilliant that night in the Aviva last year as well. Like, you look at him without Christian Eriksen, like, him that night, he's never, like, replicated that form at club level. He's been good for club level, that's why he's got an international call-up. But he looked like a Leroy Sané last year when he was playing alongside Christian Eriksen. He is not that good a player. Right. So everybody's level drops. Granted, we don't have anybody playing at a level in the league like Sisto is, or you look at the likes of Thomas Cleary, you look at Andreas Christensen, you look at Kasper Schmeichel. Like, they are better in a lot of other areas. But I just wonder how they will be able to cope with the idea that suddenly they're at close to our level again. With Eriksen, they're so much superior to us. Yeah. But that confidence blow that when Eriksen is missing, it's giving me a lot of confidence. And granted, I was not quietly confident, loudly confident when they came to the Aviva last year, and look how that ended up. I don't like to get confident when it comes to the Irish team anymore, but sometimes you just got to go with the flow.
That covers all bases. You mentioned Sergio Ramos' goal from last night and the various proximities and all that sort of stuff.
Look at that. Like,
now he does have one of his own players sort of effectively and very helpful. Two of his own players, you might say, actually being a bit of a buffer to some of the Welsh players around him. Granted, particularly this guy at centre back there, not making the most amazing inroads.
No, like he started the Welsh body in the
That's been whipped in from the left hand side here.
On the left hand side. He is standing in the middle of those two Welsh defenders. They're obviously picking up the men in white closest to them. And Sergio Ramos is just standing on his own. It was horrible defending. Just what I see him there. Like obviously Ethan Ampadu went off injured last night as well, so they could be missing Gareth Bale and Ethan Ampadu for Tuesday night.
How did he play before he went off?
Ampadu, he was their best player. Right. I just think he's an absolutely classy individual. His range of passing is outstanding. He is that person where he does a very simple thing where he just turns towards the opposition goal and passes the ball that way. And like, without being too tongue-in-cheek about it, that's one of those key skills which looks a lot easier than it really is. That the split-second pass, spotting the gap in the opponent's defence, and just bringing players like Aaron Ramsey into the side. Like,
you've me talked back into Wales being a good team even without Bale, by the way.
Why?
Outside of the crappy defending.
But Ampadu came off injured.
Yeah, is he out now? Is that?
Well, I don't know. He hobbled off.
Right.
To use that expression,
Fine.
he did hobble himself off. He wasn't stretchered off.
Right.
But Ryan Giggs didn't sound too confident in his fitness after the game. Although after the game, you've literally not had a chance to speak to the player. Or
hobbling yourself off is, doesn't sound like an amazing thing to have to do.
No, I would hate to do it myself.
One of the newspapers that did buck the trend, we mentioned the Anthony Daly quotes, one of the papers that did buck the trend of actually running with them was the Times Ireland edition, that he's eyeing that Dublin return. Rob Kearney, do not write off English sides. We'll get into that a little bit later on. And a really fantastic photograph there. You can see my £200,000 haggle with Deadly Doug. Tony Cascarino recalling his dealings with the former Aston Villa chairman who passed away yesterday at the age, I think, of 94. And there's reflections inside from Tony Cascarino, who writes about the day that he went to sign for Villa in 1990, and he sort of rocks around to his home, and Doug Ellis's wife is there, and she's got the tea cakes and sandwiches out in a silver tray, and it's all very sort of amenable, I suppose, would probably be the word I'd use here to parse what's going on. It's like a scene from Mary Poppins or Enid Blyton.
Right.
Right, Tony Cascarino here. But Doug was playing hardball. Graham Taylor was also, he was the manager at the time, obviously, and he was also in the room, and Tony was pushing for a 200 grand payment for himself, and Doug Ellis is making the point that no, there are no players around here that get paid that sort of money, so you can forget about it, pal. And essentially playing hardball and kind of giving him the idea that, listen, if it's not you, it'll be someone else, so take it, leave it, I'm not that worried. While Graham Taylor is kind of giving him the wink and saying, listen, we will get something done, this will be fine. But Doug Ellis takes him on a tour of the club at some point and shows him all the amazing photographs of the legendary players that are around the walls, and at some point or another goes, anything you notice, any sort of a theme here from a lot of these photographs you're looking at? And Tony's like, well, I don't see a lot of these guys around anymore. And he's like, absolutely, on the money. You don't do your stuff, you are out.
Right.
So it seems like the Deadly Doug, as was his nickname, does appear to have been accurate by all accounts.
How much did he settle for in the end, I wonder?
150.
All right, so it wasn't too much of a step down.
Not too much of a step down, no. And it was...
And he got a few free tea cakes out of it.
It was a 1.1 million 1.1 million transfer fee, which I think might have been a record for them at the time. But always interesting to get those, particularly back in the day, like those stories of how those transfer dealings went down in such a bloody different way to the way it happens now. Like there was the Dean Saunders, Brian Clough story of, I don't remember that. But I mean, I know
that was quite distasteful.
Fair, it was distasteful, and actually, by all accounts, a lot of it inaccurate, embellished by Dean Saunders, as it turned out. But the tone of the story, I think, is very much this sort of a tone of kind of Tony Cascarino doesn't talk about having any representative with him or anybody being his agent necessarily. It's Tony Cascarino having a conversation with the chairman of the club.
Yeah, you'd almost forget that when people say that the character has gone out of football, it's also the backroom character that's gone out. It's the cold boardroom which now prevails, with a lot more people involved, a lot bigger financial interests involved.
Yeah, but like you won't get these stories going forward, like, you know what I mean? It's, Messi isn't even in the room. He gets a call from his agent at some point later in the day going, yeah, I got you that 48 million quid you were after and everything's sorted, let's crack on.
Yeah, I guess business has changed in general. I guess it's all walks of life. But that's just like cowboy stuff in a beautiful way. We'll move on to the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Still top dogs is the back page headline, but Leinster a target for chasing pack, warns O'Driscoll, and boost for Ireland with Long back in training. Back page of the Herald then this morning is Shane Duffy saying, let's put it right. Irish squad eager to avenge Danish loss and insist they have the belief to get the win, while Dublin are to face Louth or Wexford in the Leinster Football Championship next year. And Richard Dunn making a very good point here. Denmark ordinary without Eriksson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, yes. Did you know that Christian Eriksen improves Denmark quite a bit? Back page of the Mirror this morning is have no regrets. Duffy's advice to Rice over his international future. And Klopp says you get nothing for second in football. And Giants on final approach. That's the only kind of real thing of note from that, is that it's Galway versus Mayo in a Connacht final next year. Stick that up in the Roscommon and Sligo dressing rooms now, obviously, but it's probably going to be a Galway versus Mayo Connacht final, which Mayo will win, and that'll be the end of that from a Galway football resurgence point of view.
We'll be replaying this back to you in black and white, on to use your own expression.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is. Yeah, James Horan was speaking last night about being back in the Mayo fold, and he says that he's spoken to a lot of the players about being involved next year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of question marks about potential retirements in the Mayo camp. Andy Moran being the number one.
David Clarke.
Yeah, I personally would have thought that if they're going to retire, they'd have done it by now. But Horan has basically confirmed that they're going to be around next year. By last night saying that he's spoken to the squad, starting with a top-down approach. He's spoken to all the older lads, he said. And he says, I haven't heard yet if anybody's retiring, and everybody wants to be involved with trials. Yeah. So that says to me that Andy Moran and David Clarke, etc., all want to be involved with Mayo next year. So
why not?
That's my reading of it. It's not totally confirmed.
No, but like if you are Andy Moran, for example, and there's been a new broom, and it's not that long ago that the year before last that he was the Player of the Year.
Last year.
So why the hell would you not? And also from the other side, if you're James Horan, you're like, right, this is a guy of unbelievable, like, serious pedigree.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, he's still, there isn't enough youth coming through in that Mayo team necessarily that we've seen yet that suggests that Andy Moran wouldn't be guaranteed himself a place in the first 15. Yeah, even outside of his influence.
Yeah. There is a danger with this Mayo squad that they do become too obsessed with the Dublin challenge. That James Horan has spoken. I don't think that it's James Horan's mentality, but he has spoken about some of the kids that are yet to get into the fold with the senior setup, where not that they haven't been given the opportunity yet, but they haven't had the time required to fully prove themselves as a top senior intercounty player. Whereas next year, are they going to get that space to breathe? I'm not so sure.
I think the point that you make is valid, but I'd actually extend it out. I'd say it's the worry for a lot of teams that you get overly exposed to the idea of we have to put our game plan in place to beat Dublin, and you get very focused on it. And the game plan to beat Dublin, bizarrely enough, might not be the game plan to beat everybody.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Certainly from a Mayo perspective, you look at the 2017 championship and their game plan throughout the entire summer faltered on a number of occasions. They were very lucky to survive, and it clearly worked against Dublin, but not to the full extent. The back page of the Irish Daily Star is homes where the Mart is. Martin Neal wants to see Ireland grace Euro 2020 at the Aviva for sporting rather than sentimental reasons, and model our wee army for dubs. Effing hell, says Gareth Southgate. He's got no problem with his England stars swearing tonight because they play in an empty stadium in Croatia. So it means that the television cameras and microphones might be able to pick up some F-bombs and potentially some C-bombs, which of course we would never allow to be broadcast, but that might happen with their live broadcast tonight in Croatia.
It's a bizarre line.
I guess...
Who cares? Like, footballers
asked about it. We've
shock horror.
He says that he spent 2 years trying to encourage them to talk to each other on the pitch, so it'd be counterproductive to stop them doing so now. When the goaling gets tough, then Duffy gets going, says the back of the Sun this morning. He is our best hope of goals, you would suspect, over the next two games. New horizons, says the other headline here.
Tab of the morning.
Tab of the morning to you indeed. He still hankers for a return to club management, Roy Keane does, and drive for 5. That's the story on Jim Gavin's charges and their fixtures for next summer. Friday Fizz says the front of the Racing Post, Future Champions Festival at Newmarket. It's live on ITV4. And back of the Racing Post is we meet again. England set for tight rematch with World Cup conquerors. It's Croatia against England at 7:45 this evening. Back of the Guardian then is Wales 1, Spain 4. Wales handed reality check. Like, is there a situation here where Ryan Giggs becomes Steve Staunton? Like wins his first game comprehensively.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's for a lot of reasons I suggest no, but I mean, I think that probably an outlier for international football in a lot of regards to what happened with Stan, that he was just so clearly out of his depth. And there is, I mean, I know we've been just discussing the reliance on Gareth Bale, but I mean, we've mentioned a couple of other players there that to suggest that if you or I were leading Wales, that it probably wouldn't even be that bad.
Yeah, and a lot of those players are trending in the right direction, like the Brooks and Ampadu's, and even like their championship talent looks so much better than our championship talent, which has to be a facade. The fact that Tom Lawrence is looking better than half of our championship players is just because of form. It's just because of the players they're playing around with, and that maybe on a case-by-case basis it's not the case. Front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is exercising the demons. Stones wants revenge for World Cup heartache, and England fans will be heading for the hills tonight. There's a little hill outside the stadium, and there's an apartment flat as well where all the England fans are going to be heading for, so that they can actually get their eyes in the game, which is an interesting sort of tactic. Like I would imagine that the Croatian fans are going to be there first.
Yeah, it'll be a bit weird. So that's that. We didn't. You did all of those, the racing posts, a whole lot of them done there. We didn't get any tab of the morning. We
did the new horizons.
Well, I mean, I just offered that forward just to try to dig you out a bit of a hole. God, that's bizarre.
Well, I've taken it and I've run with it.
The Irish news. We take a quick look at what's going on in the Irish news. Ex-Down star Murtagh suffers broken jaw in senior swan song. This is more stories of violence in the GAA. Brendan Crossan writing here. This is actually not in relation to violence in the GAA. It was an accidental clash that resulted in this particular injury. That is the Irish news this morning, and we also want to give you a look at what have we got here? This is a tweet from the player involved. It's been a more honest quote than your health is your wealth, Eoin. #realise this week.
Yeah, I hear that phrase quite a lot, actually. It's very true.
Yeah.
It is. Like, you obviously can't use it as sort of a bartering tool or anything, but it is kind of your measure of wealth, isn't it?
He broke his jaw in the early minutes due to an accidental clash with a teammate in the Downpatrick versus Ballyholland game in Down last week. Caught everyone's attention after the mass brawl that started in the crowd. Of course, that's what the game was infamous for, and led to players jumping in. So that's the Irish news this morning. AS as well, we want to give you a bit of a look at this Spain has goals in it. I've just translated that headline as being at an average of 4 goals per game. Luis Enrique has started his tenure well. Today's front page there after a 4-1 friendly win, as you've mentioned, over Wales last night.
Julian Lopetegui must be kicking himself. He had a squad that was ready to win a World Cup, and they didn't bottle it. They crumbled when all the political shenanigans were happening behind the scenes. So he could have been the manager that brought an unlikely Spain team to a World Cup win, given how the tournament panned out. It really could have happened. And now he's looking at this and it's like, actually, the next generation of Spain footballers are outstanding as well. I could have gone through a few more years here as Spain, got to the next Euros, and let Real Madrid sort out its own problems.
He's sitting at a pretty sweet gig as it is.
Well, he could be a lame duck manager. He could literally be the guy he's the fall guy at Real Madrid while they go through this transitionary phase.
But I mean, at the same time, he didn't. You take on that gig with good faith and a lot of good reason to take it on, is what I'm saying to you.
Well, yes, but a little bit more patience. That big payday will come eventually. He's made a bad career move.
With the other story there on AS, the pardon of Eden is the headline. Chelsea's Eden Hazard.
Top of the morning to you.
Stop backtracking now. Still hints at move away from Stamford Bridge, but not in January is the story there. So
there have been some suggestion. There was a fan poll put up by Real Madrid that most of their fans, 80% I think, wanted them to make a move for the Belgian in January, but that's clearly not going to happen.
Right. We're going to be getting the update on the latest in live sport this morning with Darren very shortly. We've rugby conversation to come with Charlie Morgan and Alan Quinlan in studio as well, and we're going to preview that Ireland-Denmark game. We're going to get the Denmark angle with Rasmus Dam Nielsen. So all that to come. Before all of that, the Keith Andrews Show with you live again yesterday lunchtime. I tackled the age-old question this week of why can't Ireland keep the ball, having played in a few professionally challenged Irish sides. Keith's in as good a position as anyone to break down our issues.
Like we talked to Walters about when Ireland do have the ball.
Yeah, look, just briefly, I want to get onto this because I do want to get to Kenny. So if we bring that back to the Welsh back four, right, with the front two, for instance, right? So I'm talking about options on the ball. And look, I've been there. I've been there in the Irish shirt where
where we're sitting here in the studio saying, why can't we pass the ball?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I just want to break it down very, very simply. Stick Conor Roberts back in there. So I see a lot of...
So this is us in our 4-4-2 shape.
So where's the...
Okay.
So here's our narrow 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Okay. So Seamus Coleman, I see a lot when he gets into these areas and advanced that he doesn't have options on. It's never easy for us. And do you know why Wes Houlihan shone for us?
Because of his movement off the ball.
And what he was able to do on the ball.
Well, obviously
drop the shoulder, create the space for himself. Right. I could never do that. Jeff Hendrick, Conor Houlihan, Glenn Whelan. Most of the midfielders need options to pass to.
Yeah.
Seamus is able to, when under pressure, if he doesn't have that option on, to manipulate the ball, drive in his little meandering way with power and pace, and create that time for himself. So then the picture opens. The vast majority of our players can't do that.
No.
So they need options on the ball. So if you look at Seamus Coleman, right back, where's your options, okay?
So show me what we are doing, not what we should be doing. What are we doing now? So Coleman has the ball here.
I don't think he knows what he's doing, realistically.
The right,
left back.
you don't think our right winger?
Our right winger won't know what he's doing. If he cuts the ball off to the line, the Welsh winger, does he move again? Our midfield, is there any type of movements where one runs off and one runs in to receive the ball? I don't think so.
Okay, I would say that shape you have us in now, 4-4-2, Coleman has the ball. I would say what we are doing when Coleman has the ball is exactly that. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, that is the Keith Andrews show from yesterday. Joe Malloy in studio alongside Keith for this week's show. You can check out the full piece, by the way, including the full extended tactics board slot there from Keith yesterday on youtube.com/off the ball. OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. We want to hear from you this morning. We do have a couple of tickets to send your way for the best comment of the day. This is in relation to the rugby. It's Leinster against Wasps tickets on. The hottest tickets in town for the game tonight.
Yeah,
7:45 kick-off.
Isn't it?
I'm going to assume so, yeah.
To see the Wasps back in town. It's the start of becoming the champ of European rugby. It will be a record equaling consecutive win, I think, tonight.
Yeah, tough done. Exactly. That the fact that they obviously went through the entire season, last season unbeaten, and sort of backing that up is kind of the biggest difficulty. And they are short odds favourites to go ahead and win the thing as well. So, I mean, we'll get into the nuance of that maybe in just a little bit. But do keep your comments coming in, and we'll give you the opportunity to be in the hat to win those tickets, which we'll announce before we leave you at the end of the show. But it is time to continue on the football theme. We saw Keith breaking down the tactics that Ireland might run with for the Denmark game just there a minute ago. I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line to get the Danish angle by Danish sports writer Rasmus Dam Nielsen. Good morning to you, Rasmus.
Morning, guys.
And thanks a lot for taking our call. I wonder, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this game for tomorrow night, how the nation have reacted to the performance of the World Cup. Obviously, a pretty strong game in the overall sense in the group stages, and had done pretty well there. Came up against obviously a very good Croatia team, which you eventually bowed out to refresh people's memories on penalties there. But just in terms of the reaction since that, Rasmus.
Yeah, of course, everyone was. It was kind of mixed feelings because we thought we played maybe our best game against Croatia. We were so close beating, at that point, maybe the best team in the World Cup. So it was mixed feelings. I think, the goal was to get on from the group. We did that, maybe not playing the best football, but then we... in a Danish way, exploded in the game against Croatia, and so pretty satisfied with the overall performance, I think.
Yeah, and in terms of that sort of mixed feeling, certainly on this side of the water, we tend to get, and I guess it's probably a truism for a lot of footballing and sporting nations, that we tend to get very dialed into the fact that it's the manager's fault, and it's obviously all quite catastrophic. What's the sense there in terms of what went wrong and why it went wrong?
It was actually quite funny because in the group stages, people were a bit frustrated with O'Gara. I didn't think that he played offensively enough. Were very much focused on the defense. But if you look at the Croatia game, the defense was actually what brought us very far against a very good team. So in the end, people was, I think, actually pretty satisfied with what he achieved. He's not, he will never be the manager where people think, oh, he just makes us play fantastic football, but he gets the results, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I guess what he's been able to do, and we've unfortunately seen it ourselves here in Dublin, is that he's been able to get the best out of the best player. We've seen quite often in international teams that it's a lot simpler than it looks. You basically get the best out of your world-class talent if you've got one, and suddenly the results will follow. And he's been able to do that with Christian Eriksen. Of course, in the context of this week, he's not going to have him, but I'm sure the Danish public must appreciate what he's been able to do in terms of getting the best out of Christian Eriksen.
Exactly, and that is by far his biggest achievement. No one, Morten Olsen, who's probably a better skilled coach than O'Gara, wasn't able to get the best out of Christian Eriksen. So that is without a doubt O'Gara's biggest achievement.
So what does he do without him?
Yeah, what to do without him? We'll see on Saturday. It's a big question here in Denmark because we don't have a natural replacement for Christian Eriksen. I think the player that maybe looks at him the most is Daniel Vaz, and he's out of favor and not even in the squad. I think he will modify the midfield a bit, maybe make it more flat. Still with three in the middle, but I think it might be Pierre-Emil Højbjerg, the Southampton player, who will replace Christian Eriksen. And then you have Lasse Schöne and Thomas Delaney on the side. So Lasse Schöne will be the playmaker, and then Pierre-Emil Højbjerg and Thomas Delaney will be the ones who on turns make the runs in the dangerous areas.
Yeah, it's been interesting reading some of the quotes and the reaction from one of those players, particularly that you mentioned, Thomas Delaney, in the newspapers this week in terms of Eriksen's absence. And I mean, even from a player's point of view, they talk about, what sort of an impact will this guy have when he's not there? And Thomas Delaney saying, well, generally we just give him the ball and we let him go and do his thing. But it sounds like from what you're saying, they're not necessarily going to entirely overhaul the system to kind of reflect his absence.
No, I think, as Thomas Delaney also is saying that he, among others, now will have to be more in possession and keep the ball and for the goods of Denmark, he's just switched to Dortmund, where he is forced to be a player with more possession. They are a more possessive team that Werder Bremen, where he played before. And I know that he's been trying to develop his game in terms of being able to play the ball more forward, like Christian Eriksen is eminently to. Christian Eriksen is very, very good to, turn over the game and just quickly set up a counter-attack, and that will be Thomas Delaney and Pierre-Emil Højbjerg's main focus, I think.
Well, what's the general Danish sense around the Nations League and this group in particular? Let's just stick with the competitive nature for just a moment, because obviously you had that great 2-0 win against Wales, and Wales hammered us a couple of days before that. Denmark must be pretty confident that you're going to top this group and get promoted to Pool A.
Yeah, I think so. To be honest, also our last encounter in the memories, but I think people still have to figure out what to think about this Nations League. There's no doubt that the Danes prefer to qualify directly for the Euros, and then. If we lose, if we win, I don't think people have made up their mind yet. But of course, we want to beat Ireland. We want to beat every team that the national team is meeting.
What are your? What's the general sense of the state of what you're going to be meeting tomorrow night, Rasmus, in Denmark? What do people think of the Republic of Ireland national team?
I think that it's a team that we have to beat. We proved it last time, and as you know, that feeling sits in football fans. If you beat a team last time, then you should also do it next time if you were as confident as Denmark were last time. So Denmark is not scared of Ireland, but I think that the national players maybe have more respect for the opponents tomorrow than the Danish fans has.
Because there was a suggestion that the Danish team could have been in a spot of trouble there, obviously last month with the futsal players lining out against Slovakia. You got them back for the Wales game, and like the last time I checked in on it, it was a situation where Kasper Schmeichel and Christian Eriksen had agreed to play that Wales game, and all the players obviously did line out, but that the situation with the Danish FA wasn't fully resolved. Is that still the case?
No, it's resolved now.
Okay.
They got an agreement running for 6 years, so that's great. What they did was that the CEO of the Danish Football Federation stepped aside, not down, but just out of the negotiations, and so did the president of the Players Union, the Danish Players Union, and then the board and some of the players stepped together and found a solution. A solution that both parts seem to be satisfied with. And to top that off, the Danish Football Association hired a sporting director, as you know it from Germany with Oliver Bierhoff. They hired the former player Peter Moller, a former striker. I don't know if you remember him. But that has been also very well appreciated by the players, because now they have. He's the one who has to take the negotiations next time, and now they can negotiate with the former player, a player who knows, or a person who knows where they come from. So right now, everything is settled, and that's the truth. So let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, like that sounds like a great solution, and it sounds like everything is resolved, and that the players are clearly delighted with this 6 years. I mean, it's going to see out a lot of their careers. But is the Danish FA fully happy with this? I mean, it was quite an embarrassing sequence for the Danish FA because it would have looked very, very bad. Like, I think a lot of us would support the players in terms of their arguments last month, because you've only got a very finite playing career and you've got to make as much as you can commercially from that playing career. So the Danish FA didn't reflect too well on them. Is there any lingering sense that, you know, there might be revenge coming down the track, that, you know, they'll get their own back in terms of saving face down the line, or have they taken the loss, so to speak?
I think they've taken the loss because if they continue this, it will only, you know, create more chaos and more what we say unpopularity amongst the people. So I think the only interest of the Football Federation is to just close this right now.
Yeah, there's been certainly a lot of conversation about the overly violent personal attacks, was the expression I think that was used by Christian Eriksen, in fact, in relation to those discussions. Just finally, before we let you go, Rasmus, we haven't beaten you in a competitive game since 1979. Do you expect that to change tomorrow?
Honestly, no. Sorry, guys. I hope and think Denmark will win 2-0. Right.
That's depressing, but possibly quite accurate. It does sound like as if you've got your hands full there as well in the background. Thanks a million for taking the call this morning.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks a lot. Rasmus Dam Nielsen on the line there from Denmark ahead of this game tomorrow night. 2-0 to Denmark, Eoin.
Yeah, that would be obviously a terrible result from an Irish perspective. We can basically... Could we write off the Nations League then, in terms of getting promoted? Obviously, it'd be game over.
Exactly.
Finishing second, though, there's still an incentive in that in terms of seeding for the European qualifications and stuff like that. It would mean though that we would need to beat Wales at home and probably go and get something in Copenhagen as well, depending on other results. So wouldn't be a great sort of reflection, especially because Christian Eriksen won't be playing if you get beaten 2-0 without.
Now we did up our graphic, obviously pre Christian Eriksen's stomach issues, so that'll explain that. But it is the game is live on a bloody long off the ball. I mean, I say that in a positive sense. Off the ball tomorrow on the radio. So it's Nathan and Stephen Hunt in commentary for Ireland versus Denmark in the UEFA Nations League. It's a 7:45 kick-off there, but as I said, it's a long show. It's on air tomorrow from 1 o'clock and on until 10 p.m. There's a couple of live Heineken Champions Cup commentaries to throw into the mixer there as well. But full live and extended commentary of Ireland-Denmark tomorrow.
And Challenge Cup.
And the Challenge Cup. Absolutely.
So we've got
sticking up for the small man there on. That's
3 different tournaments represented on Off the Ball tomorrow with full live commentary.
Yeah, so it's a jam-packed day, and as we said, sort of on the air tomorrow from 1 o'clock. So that's where we sit with all of that good stuff. Keep your comments coming into us, by the way. There's plenty of people been in contact. A lot of people looking to get their hands on these little beauties here. These are tickets for tonight's game at the RDS between Leinster and Wasps, and we're going to give them away to one lucky audience member this morning, viewer, listener, whatever you're doing. Get in touch with us on the hashtag OTBAM, or leave a comment on the Facebook, YouTube or Twitter pages as well. And we've had lots of stuff in. I'm just trying to think if there's any of it that's actually usable on. YouTube obviously tends to throw up some pretty interesting stuff. One here, Lambe Iyer says, morning lads, from the Wednesday night show, Leinster have so much IP in terms of Europe, in quotation marks. What's an English translation of this?
Yeah, that was Matt Williams who said that on Wednesday Night Rugby the other day.
Yeah.
What does he mean by IP?
Intellectual property.
Ah, yes. They do have a lot of
I mean,
IP,
they've experience of playing in Europe, is what's being said.
Yeah, they've got a lot of learned experiences. Like Leo Cullen does say that they're still not at the final product. I wonder when do we see that final product and how terrifying it might be for all the rest of us who, aren't from Leinster. Like yourself.
Well,
Connacht and Munster fans alike will be reeling at the possibility of Leinster getting even better than they currently are.
One of the other highlights last night when we were in Limerick for our roadshow with Ronan O'Gara and Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood was that in one of the ad breaks I went on, and we'd go on sometimes and people on the night will tweet in who are in the audience and that kind of thing. So somebody had tweeted in saying that the sentiments of which was ultimately that, looking forward to the Heineken Cup coming back to Munster, to which I said, well, I can't see it happening anytime soon.
That's do you get pleasure from that, just seeing Munster fans sad?
To be honest,
it's quite a poor reflection on you, I think, really, that you would actually get some sort of joy out of that.
I'd accept that. Look, riling people up is I'm all for it.
No, I'm all for riling people up as well, but I think the fact that you get pleasure from it is maybe a little bit weird. I
do it so often here every Friday morning on that it's, I need something to keep me going.
Yeah, you just need that. You need to be hooked up. Put it right into your veins, Adrian, that riding of people up.
Mainline it. Right, 20-9 on this, or coming up on 20-9 on this Friday morning. Wherever you are, we're delighted to have you along with us, and do keep your comments coming into us, whether it's football, rugby or any of that good stuff. Our IP YouTuber has been back in contact with us to say, cheers lads, was a bit of an RC statement.
Oh, wow, that's... Now he's just getting joy from riding Matt Williams up.
Darren Cleary is on the way with all the very latest in live sport, but before all of that, is it time for a change in the Ireland midfield? Should we drop Jeff Hendrick? Thoughts of Keith Andrews?
The obvious omission is Jeff Hendrick, and this kind of pained me a little bit because I have been one of his biggest fans from day dot, coming through at Derby, the way his education went at Derby, with Clough giving him the nuts and bolts of being a central midfielder, a little bit more old school. And then Steve McLaren came in and fine-tuned him. And then he's gone to Burnley, which is probably a little bit of a hybrid in between both. He just hasn't hit the heights since the Euros. And I don't know why. At times he's played for Burnley as an advanced attacking midfielder and does a good job, but it's not his strength. And now I don't think Dyche trusts him in a two-man midfield, which they've gone back to. And I think his Ireland performances haven't been at the level that they probably Well, they certainly should be, could be.
What might he be missing that Dyche mightn't like in a two-man midfield? He's 26 years old. I mean, he's made for box-to-box.
Yeah.
He should be able to do everything. So obviously he's just not seeing things tactically.
Well, Jack Cork and Stephen Defoe last year were outstanding with Jeff ahead of them.
Yeah.
And they were very accomplished, both in possession and holding in a structured role within the midfield, staying behind the ball, and they built up a really good partnership. Now, Ashley Defoe's missed a good chunk of the end of last season and this season, and Ashley Westwood's come back in to the team ahead of Jeff. So what's he missing? He's probably not as accomplished in possession as those two players that I mentioned, in terms of the way that he has tried to evolve the way they're playing at Burnley. But I just love Jeff, and I would love him to get the licence of one sitter, two box to box, like I've set up that team there with Sean Williams at the base of it. But I just think on current form, which I alluded to before, Callum O'Dowda, Harry Arthur are playing better than him. Callum O'Dowda, off the back of last month against Poland, deserves a crack of the whip. And I think Harry Arthur for Cardiff, in what's been a tough start to their season, has been probably one of the shining lights.
Must have been freezing in the studio yesterday, Keith Andrews, with the army jacket. He looks like he's going to go out and like march through the frozen tundra.
It was good. That is a good shirt.
It's not a shirt.
That was a shirt.
All he's missing is like the lacy things to actually make him look like a full corporal.
Oh no, that's.
You mean the patches with the
patches?
flags,
Yeah.
I mean, this looked. I don't know what that was. Darren, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
I'm sticking by that was a really anything Keith Andrews is wearing on. You can generally rest assured that it's of the highest quality.
Yeah, it's fashionable. That style on.
Stop being such a sheep, and some sort of critical thinking here would be nice for a change.
Woof.
Harsh.
Shots fired.
Very harsh.
Darren was going to bring us up to speed with everything that's going on. We're going to bring you, by the way, shortly enough, some of the video footage from last night's show at the University Concert Hall in Limerick. A pretty special show it was as well, so that's coming your way in just a little bit. But Darren, what have you got for us?
Yeah, we start with the rugby, and Leinster begin on the journey, Adrian. They hope will end in Newcastle in May. They open their European Cup campaign against Wasps tonight at the RDS, 7:45 start time. It's live cross off the ball. Head coach Leo Cullen has recalled his heavy hitters, with Jemison Gibson Park missing out through injury, James Lowe able to start on the wing, Scott Fardy on the bench, the return of Johnny Sexton at out half, one of 9 changes made to the side over last weekend's Pro 14 victory over Munster. And Cullen knows their success last season domestically and in Europe has put a target on their back.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there was any target on our back for the last couple of seasons, so yeah, no, it's good to be back in that situation where teams are looking at us a little bit more. For us, we just need to focus on our own bits and understand what makes us a good team, what makes us struggle in games at different times. So we're far from the finished product, so there's a lot of things we can get better at as a group, so that's what we've tried to go after during the course of pre-season and into the early rounds of the Pro 14. So it's a different step up for us now this weekend against a team that we struggled against here a few years ago, so it's going to be a great challenge to see how far we've progressed.
The Republic of Ireland manager Martin O'Neill has been given a fitness boost ahead of the Nations League meeting with Denmark. Shane Long has overcome an ankle knock and took full part in training yesterday. Gareth Bale, though, looks set to miss Wales' match against the boys in green on Tuesday. The Real Madrid man set out their 4-1 defeat to Spain in Cardiff last night. After the game, manager Ryan Giggs revealed that Bale is suffering from muscle fatigue. Giggs added it is very unlikely he'll play any part in that game against Ireland. The Dublin Derby takes centre stage tonight in the SSE Airtricity League. Shamrock Rovers travelled to St Pat's, while the newly crowned SSE Airtricity League champions Dundalk return to action later. Stephen Kenny's charges on the road to the RSC to take on Waterford. Runners-up Cork City play host to a Limerick side gearing up for a battle against relegation. While Dublin City Council have unveiled ambitious plans for the redevelopment of Dalymount Park. Initially, a 10,000-seater stadium was mooted for the site, but the stakeholders have decided to move forward with a municipal stadium that will hold 6,000 fans and will be of UEFA Category 3. It will include on the site a library, flexible community space and meeting rooms, as well as a concourse at ground level, which can be used for community events and activities on non-match days. Plans also underway to create an interactive football museum at the stadium as part of the redevelopment. The project set to cost an estimated €30 million. No timescale mentioned in yesterday's FAI press release, but back in May, the CEO John Delaney said he expected Bowes and Sheld to be both playing at the venue by 2022.
The library didn't. The library looked like it would hold about 10 books.
Yeah, was it the most impressive library?
Is this like an actual sort of to size? You can go there on the right hand side.
I think the idea of just actually having somewhere that will function 7 days a week is brilliant.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I just think you did like $10 and then it's like, right, that's us done.
As in you think they should change the word library to bookshelf?
I'm having that on.
Yeah. Books are an endangered species, lad. By 2022, there won't be any books. It'll just be 10 iPads and you can borrow one.
What else we got for us?
The magazine that reported on rape allegations made against Cristiano Ronaldo has defended their reporting of that story. Ronaldo denies assaulting Catherine Mayorga at a Las Vegas hotel room in 2009. Lawyers representing the player said on Wednesday that documents had been completely fabricated, but Der Spiegel, the German magazine, said, "We have hundreds of documents from different sources that substantiate our reporting." It added in a statement, "We stand by our reporting. We have no reason to believe that those documents are not authentic." Well, Anthony Daly is staying tight-lipped with mid-links to the vacant Dublin hurling job. The Herald report that the county committee have been given authority to appoint a successor without a full meeting of the board. Maddie Kenny, Anthony Cunningham and Daly on the three-man shortlist for the gig. Daly, though, has club commitments with Kilmacud Crokes. They are gearing up for the Dublin Senior Hurling Championship semi-final against Ballyboden St Endist. Asked by RTE if the top job in Dublin hurling appealed to Dalo, he said, "Yeah, but sitting on the couch here has a huge appeal too. And writing for the Examiner has a huge appeal. You can criticise everybody. I've 6 years done in Dublin and 3 in Clare. You'd be wondering, would you have that hunger ever again? I haven't thought about it." Well, the Clare manager, Colm Collins, believes the provincial championship is past its sell-by date. He has called on the GAA to scrap the format and plan a new competition based on an open draw. Kerry aiming to win a 7th straight Munster title. Dublin looking for 9 in a row in Leinster. Kerry will face either Clare or Waterford in next year's semi-finals. The Clare boss feels that fans are bored to death of watching the same matchups year on year. He told RTE, "We badly need to shake the whole thing up. I wish someone would grasp the nettle and just say, here, 32 teams, let's go." Imagine the excitement if you could have Dublin and Kerry or Dublin and Tyrone in the same group, besides churning out the same old pairings. He added, "The sky is not going to fall in if we get rid of the provincials." Well, Mona McSharry has qualified for the final of the 50-metre freestyle at the Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires. The Sligo swimmer set a new Irish senior record in qualifying second fastest in the semi-finals behind Barbara Simonova. McSharry finished second in her semi in a time of 25.42 seconds. The final will take place later tonight. While Khabib Nurmagomedov has threatened to quit the UFC if the promotion axes his teammate Zubara Tukhugov. In an Instagram post, the lightweight champion told the UFC to send me my broken contract if they cut to Tukhugov for his role in the brawl that marred the event last week in Las Vegas. Nurmagomedov also told the UFC to keep his $2 million purse. These are some of the scenes that happened the last day, which have been the big point of contention. A number of them from Khabib's corner are facing sanctions from the UFC.
Yeah. I mean, not really up to him to decide who gets banned or not banned, or it shouldn't really be up to him to... I mean, he should be doing almost the opposite of what he's doing, saying, listen, I can't endorse what that guy did, and whatever punishment he gets is coming to him.
Yeah, he's done the complete opposite, and he said, if you kick those boys out, I'm walking too.
Yeah.
High stakes game of poker now. He's put his chips down, he's shown his cards. That is our update, though.
That is.
That's a lot.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks a lot for that. We've plenty of comments coming into us. We're going to get to them in just a little bit. But before all of that, I think we're going to take some video, if I'm right, from last night's show in the University Concert Hall in Limerick. We had Ronan O'Gara there, with Brian O'Driscoll there, and Keith Wood as well. Take a look.
There's been a progression with everything. You look at it for kind of Munster and then Leinster taking it over and driving it to new standards, then Ireland, and this team is... I think they consistently know how to win, and I think it has become complicated, I suppose, with Razzie going back to South Africa and doing a good job and selecting whoever he wants. So South Africa will be difficult, but I think it's without a shadow of a doubt this Irish team will go there with probably the most genuine belief than a previous Irish team.
You've been pretty open about your desire someday to come back, since you retired and since you got into coaching, to come back to Munster maybe, to go and take an Ireland job. I'm just wondering, over the last 5 years and having gone to France and travelled to New Zealand, has that changed your worldview of what you can do in coaching? Like, even in the last couple of months, you've been linked with jobs in France, you've been linked with a role possibly with England. Even after 2019, Scott Robertson could become the All Blacks coach, there might be a role in the Crusaders. Have your thoughts of what the next 10 years look like changed because of what you've experienced?
Yeah, and the biggest challenge is getting the family balance right. You know, I just wish New Zealand was closer to to Ireland, because it has all kinds of implications for, in your family. Jess's parents are getting a little bit older, so she likes to be within touching distance, and the reality is it's 2 bloody days to get home from there. So you can't get home quickly, and kids start secondary school in 2 years' time, so, I don't know, do you want to put them in a school somewhere and then another 3 years? So huge decisions in that regard, Nathan, I think. But, I was at the dinner in London on Tuesday night, and you saw, I suppose, the highlights reel, and highlights reel always look better maybe than reality, but like seeing those moments in red and in green, of course, if it's your home place, you'd love to do well, because I think you could potentially rekindle that connection with the supporters and get that fortress going. And you look at the Limerick hurlers this year, like, I think there wasn't I don't know, I was in Kerry on my own, but I was in tears watching it, kind of going, is there something wrong with me, But there's something about... I think there's something beautiful about Irish sport on a day like that, where they come from, obviously they know where they're coming from, Limerick, but to an outsider it was like, this is quite amazing what they've finished off.
Yeah, Ronan O'Gara pretty excited about that Limerick hurling win this summer there, in conversation with Nathan last night at the University Concert Hall in Limerick. He also had some other stuff to say about Munster. Let's take a quick look at that.
The O'Gara O'Connell dream team then, when's it going to happen?
No, I'm sure it's like, that's a lot of big ifs in there. I would obviously enjoy it, because Paul is a perfectionist. He's a brilliant, I think, outlook on the game. So would it work in my eyes? Yes, of course. You know what I mean? I think titles, I think, don't matter to people that are secure. So as long as you kind of back yourself, that's why I think people in any walk of life, if they're very good. So when Brian played, I had a very open relationship with him, talked to him about stuff, because he was very secure in the fact that by telling something, he knew that whoever else was to essentially copy this or get that information couldn't do it as well as he could do it. And there's a great, I think, comfort in that. And that's why, if you've got a laptop here and I can give you all the plays, we play. But it's the small detail that matters in everything. So, you can have all the playbook, you can have whatever you want, but that isn't really what's interesting. It's how you do it, and when you do it, and how you do it consistently.
Yeah, and just after that he went on to talk about running the Leinster Loop at the Crusaders as well, so you can check out that full piece on youtube.com/off the ball. Quinny, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
The Raj Paul O'Connell dream team, are we going to see it?
It's not the dream team, because I think for it to be the dream team I'd need to be the manager of that team.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, they're two egomaniacs, so you'd have to kind of separate them, and even though they're great friends and get on well, and I'm very close to both of them, they're very, very driven. Yeah, look, in an ideal world it'd be fantastic. I think the message to kind of send out to the group and people, and the excitement it would bring, because they're such iconic figures, and they're so embedded in that red jersey, and it'll never change from, even though both of them went on to play over 100 times for Ireland and achieved incredible things for Ireland over the years. That's where it started for them, Munster, so it'll always be with them. So I think, yeah, the supporters would be incredibly excited, but it'd have to be right for them as well, and there's no reason why not. Roger's gone on to achieve a lot of good things now, and incredible things, winning with Racing and top 14 and Super Rugby with Crusaders, which, to be fair, is not that hard. We tell him that just to kind of keep him grounded. They're probably going to win it anyway, even if he wasn't there or not.
He dodged it there, but who'd be the head coach in that dynamic?
I don't know. I think being a head coach is tough now, because you've an awful lot of planning and stuff, and a huge amount of detail. I think Roger's more experienced now at the moment. Paul has only dipped his toes into with the under-20s, and he's just started with Stad this year, so it's kind of hypothetical. It's certainly one the fans would love. There's no doubt about that. So we may see it, and it's great to see him coaching and getting into the game. I said it to Dricko a couple of weeks ago. Why aren't you getting back coaching? You're probably one of the greatest rugby players of all time. We've a small country. Your information, your detail, your experiences would be fantastic. But I don't think it's for him at the moment. Anyway, but
acting for him.
Well, to see someone like Paul getting into it, I was delighted this year because, you know, he's obviously, if he stays going and enjoys it, but you never know. It would be brilliant to see that scenario in a few years.
Whatever about the organisation, Roger's been at 2 roadshows we've had the last 12 months, and he's been late for both of them.
And probably used bad language in both of them as well.
C-bomb was dropped last night.
Oh, Lord. But he's great. He's honest, he's open. Sometimes it's just really intriguing to listen to his ideas.
Yeah. Let's have a bit of a look at what we're going to be chatting about over the next little bit in the company of Alan Quinlan and Charlie Morgan as well of the Telegraph, who's joining us on the line. It's the return, obviously, of the Heineken Champions Cup this weekend. Leinster versus Wasps at the RDS tonight. A game you can hear live on Off the Ball from, I think it's 7:45 kick-off tonight. These beauties, by the way, to give away to the best comment of the morning. We're also going to get stuck into Exeter Munster, which is a pretty exciting game to look forward to tomorrow. Ulster versus Leicester as well. And a little bit of chat about the Premiership. That's the flavour of what's happening. And the Leinster game tonight, there's Ulster as well. Conor Morris and Paddy Wallace on duty for that one tomorrow from 5:30. So that is the rugby coverage and Off the Ball for the next little bit. Charlie Morgan, good morning to you.
Hi there, thanks for having me again.
Premiership tops ? Read the bottom line on that little bit of a teaser of what's coming up. So just to kick things off, that ongoing debate, Charlie, about the pecking order of which country's league is above the next one. Is the Premiership still see it as the elite tournament of World Rugby?
I certainly, I think the first 6 weeks of the Premiership have just been hugely interesting, just because of how they've panned out. You've got Exeter and Saracens who, going into it, a lot of guys predicted that there'd be a 2-tier sort of makeup of it, with Exeter and Saracens miles ahead, not just because of the depth they've got in the squad, but also kind of how settled they are tactically. I don't think anybody thought just how drastic that'd be, because you've got Exeter and Saracens both won 6 out of 6, and then you've got a 10-point gap between down to third, which is where Wasps are, and the rest of the teams in the whole division are separated by 12 points, which is remarkable, really. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how the Champions Cup develops, how much that crazy start spooks teams, because, and what I mean by that is that the domestic kind of commitments that they've got and the goals that they've got might change over the course of the season. So, for example, I'd put Gloucester with the best chance of maybe getting a quarter-final outside of those top 2. But if push comes to shove sort of around January and they're so desperate to get in that top 4, which has to be their main aim, it'd be interesting to see how that changes their kind of outlook on Europe.
Yeah, we've a lot of games to get stuck into, Quinny. We're going to start with Leinster Wasps, obviously being tonight's match, 7:45 start there. Toulouse, Wasps, Bath, all in the same pool. It's a tough pool for Leinster, and obviously we saw the quality that they brought last season. But that tough pool, matched with any iota of complacency, which can seep into any team, really, could result in a land here for Leinster if they don't have their eyes on the prize.
For anybody who's won a trophy, the intrigue and the questions are, do you have the same motivation, hunger, desire, all that kind of stuff. But I think they've such quality in the squad. I think they have a great blend of experience and youth as well. Sometimes the young players we've seen with James Ryan, Jordan Larmour, Andrew Porter, these guys coming in, they're just used to a winning culture. Is my sound not working? Yeah,
we're going to get that fixed there. We'll have a quick look at that, Quinny. You get that sorted.
It's a bad start to Munster this weekend.
Well, we'll bring Charlie. We'll bring you back in just on the Wasps aspect of things. Nathan Hughes obviously out for a culmination of sort of bizarre enough reasons. Joe Launchbury as well out for Wasps. They're just looking. Quinny's passed me the table here and looking at it. They're obviously one of those teams that you've mentioned as being having had a good start, albeit 10 points off the top 2. But without those 2 players, do you suspect now that they move away from maybe that kind of pack-focused power game and maybe look to move the ball about a bit more?
Yeah, I was at Wasps' first game of the season against Worcester, and they were really clunky. A big loss for them is Jimmy Gopperth, because he's been really integral at 12. Whether it's been Danny Cipriani before this season, now this season it's been Lima Sopoaga. They're really reliant on that second playmaker. Without that at Worcester, I think Nathan Hughes made something like 30 carries at six ways, and they just scraped past Worcester, who are they scrap really hard, but Wasp might have been expected to win that slightly easily. Another big miss for them is Dan Robson, fantastic scrum halves, finally who had just before, I think it's Achilles ankle sort of problem he picked up last week in their loss to Gloucester, but he's really important for them. He's another big miss, and they've got Villy LaRue back, but they look slightly thin against what's a pretty awesome Leinster squad that came out last night.
And what about the boot of Elliot Daly and Lima Sapawanga? Is this something that we can see that again in terms of that those absences from the pack, Charlie? Do you think that's going to be a factor?
Yeah, sure. I think any team that Elliot Daly plays for, that boot gives. I know we saw it with the Lions, didn't we? Those long range penalties in tight games when I think the weather's expected to be pretty dodgy, isn't it, in Dublin? So that gives them a chance. Liam Sopwanga's come in, obviously with a big reputation, and interestingly enough, they've helped him out by playing a new signing, Michael Le Bourgeois at 12, who's come from Championship Club. Now he's a really good operator, really rounded operator, and he plays in that mould that Gopeth did. So that takes a little bit of playmaking pressure off Liam Sopawanga, but without Joe Launchbury, as you've mentioned, and without Nathan Hughes, it's whether their pack can mix it with Leinster's. And I know kind of scanning through social media last night when that Leinster 23 came out, the depth of it is just phenomenal, as Alan's mentioned there as well. The guys they've got, the forwards they've got on the bench means that 80 minutes that they'll produce up front will be seriously impressive.
Well, that's the thing, the questions over Sapawanga and whether or not he's fully fit, and LaRue playing last weekend, it's such a quick turnaround for him. Like, you look at Leinster, and obviously the strength is the depth, as Charlie mentions there. But at what point does rotation become an issue? Does it become an issue at any point? Like, I mean, Rhys Ruddock not even in the squad. Like, he's not going to be happy about it. Is there a point where he gets pissed off about being left out?
Yeah, there is. But look, I think the depth of the Irish squads is probably one of the big advantages, maybe over some of the English clubs, that it's not just the 23 guys, it's another 20 guys. Well, particularly with Leinster, they've shown that in Europe to be able to compete in European rugby and Pro 14 rugby, that they just have a massive depth in their squad. They've 18, 19, 20 guys away with Ireland at different stages of the season, so it's phenomenal. And you're talking about Villy LaRue coming back and playing 6 days later and talking about rest and the right thing. Like, Cian Healy comes in, he only came off the bench last week, Sean Cronin, Furlong, so they're fresh, they're really fresh from last week. It's phenomenal. Van der Fleer starts at 7, Levy goes to 6. So they've not a lot of rugby play, those two guys there. So there's a huge amount of freshness there. Jack Conan's coming back from injury, and as you say, Ruddock's on the bench. So
he's not on the bench.
Not being on the bench. Maybe as a former Munster man, I'm envious of Leinster, what they're doing, what they're achieving, the amount of depth they have. They've signed one overseas player this year, and Joe Tumani. Usually we hear in the Premiership soccer, why didn't Tottenham go out and sign a load of players? Well, Leinster didn't have to sign players because they're just producing drives, and there's probably a few more guys coming through in their academy.
Yeah, Leo Cullen's saying that they're not the finished product yet. Like, how close are they to that finished product? Because it does seem to me that they're pretty close.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close. They're very, very close. And look, he's probably taken a little bit of pressure off them. And one of the other intrigues that I always think is how do you handle yourself as champions? How do you handle it? Because there is pressure. Wasp will come tonight with Dai Young will have his side kind of really fired up. They won there a couple of years ago, and they'll fancy their chances. They'll go, if we go and beat them, it's a massive boost to our club, to our team, to our growth. So they'll probably go with an extra bit of energy, enthusiasm, aggression, awareness. But Leinster will have to deal with that this year every time they play someone. But they just have a control and a composure, and it's very, very impressive. Not just from what they do in attack or how they defend, they're just very controlled and composed.
That Leinster back row, Conan, Van der Fleer and Levy, an impressive looking unit obviously, and a young unit, and we've mentioned Rhys Ruddock and not in the squad, and Sean O'Brien on the bench, and I'm sure he'll want to have a say about it, but that's a back row that could be in situ for Leinster for the next, and potentially for Ireland for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, it could be. They're young. They've produced the goods already. Like Levy was just outstanding for Ireland and Leinster last year. Van der Fleer was your starting 7 in Paris. Jack Conan has been consistently good, very, very powerful since Jamie Heaslip retired. That kind of pressure and dilemma of will I play, won't I play is gone. He seems to be the one who's kind of the first choice number 8. So Sean O'Brien won't be happy, particularly given going into Europe and November internationals coming up and the little amount of rugby he's played over the last kind of 2 years with down to injuries basically, so he'll be disappointed. And but Leo Cullen's very shrewd, to be fair, you know, having been in there, and he'll know that Sean O'Brien will come off the bench with a real anger, aggression, and give him that impact. And Van der Fleer gets rewarded for playing really well against Munster last week when he came off the bench.
Just before we leave that game, Charlie, to yourself, what represents a good result, do you think, for Wasps tonight?
I think the handicap's -17, isn't it? I don't think that's overly generous towards Leinster. I think if a losing bonus point would be a superb result for Wasps, to be honest.
Right. I think Launchbury and Nathan Hughes are huge to any team. They're so big, powerful, physical, and Leinster kind of strangle you up front, and they go after you there with their physicality, their tempo, their execution at the breakdown. They had 64 rucks last week, Adrian, against Munster, and they won the 64 of them.
Incredible.
You know, that's just that detail at the level they're at. And there's no, like Rog was saying, you can analyse them all you want, but you've got to stop that. They're just very good technically. Then they're hard, they're aggressive, they've plenty of heart and passion for the jersey. So all those factors turn you into a great team. Are they beatable? Well, every team is beatable if you take your chances. But when you play good teams, Wasps have to go there tonight. If they go there tonight, and if they get a sniff of a chance and get a bit of momentum, they've got to take the score, take the chance, and hope that maybe Leinster are a few percent off. But like Charlie said, the spread is probably, being generous to us.
I'm feeling good about the season ahead, Quinny. That's the sort of story I'm taking from that. That's
You're
Leinster
Connacht in the Challenge Cup.
What's that?
Connacht in the Challenge Cup. I'm not sure why you're feeling good.
Tonight at 7:15. Jesus, you're even buying into it. Exeter versus Munster is the other game we want to talk about. Charlie, Exeter, just a really interesting story as a club and where they've come from. They've really done things the right way around. They've got a coach that is probably destined for big things, but again, like not necessarily a sexy name, I suppose, when it comes to rugby. But they're a club that are sustainable and unusually that actually make some money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They're doing a lot of things right. I was interested down there a little bit in pre-season and asking them. Last season they had a pretty good season. Did really well again, sort of bringing through these young players, but they fell short at two sort of kind of points. They lost against Saracens in the final of the Premiership, and they lost both games of that double header against Leinster. Now they've probably arguably got closest to Leinster of anybody in Europe. They're fantastic. Sorry, in the away game that was the week after they got turned over comprehensively at Sandy Park by a really well drilled and brilliant Leinster performance. And they went the next week. They very nearly turned over Leinster by really attacking the breakdown and really changing up. So they're clever as well and they're adaptable. Now, over pre-season, I went down there and I spoke to Ali Heifer, who's their head coach, and Rob Baxter, their director of rugby, about whether last season meant that they had to change things up because they'd reached this point and they'd lost these two kind of big keynote games in their season, and they were kind of kept their cards slightly close to their chest, but they said that maybe they might change some things in the way they attack. Now, the first 6 games of this season, they probably haven't had it as easy as Saracens had. They haven't had necessarily the dominant victories that Saracens had, but they problem solved their way out of quite tough games. And this last Friday against Bath, they scored some fantastic tries from unstructured rugby, which you wouldn't necessarily have associated with them last year. So they come up against Munster, top of the table, only by virtue of points difference. But they've looked excellent, and they've definitely honed sort of another attacking dimension to their game. They don't have Sam Simmons, who's really at number 8, who's really dynamic guy. I think he's got a knee injury that might keep him out for the whole year. But Matt Kvesic has moved to 8, and he looks really fit, looks a little bit lighter than he has done, and he's carried so hard. That the back rows going against the packs, to be honest, as a whole, that tussle will be fascinating. I think Joey Carbery says is refereeing, so the breakdown's going to be let go, let it breathe, as it were, and that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I know Quinny's written about Exeter, I think, in the Indo today as well. From the Munster point of view, Quinny, the 10 years obviously since tomorrow. Excellent. Tomorrow. It's on the front of the thing today, that's where I picked it up. 10 years since they've won the Heineken Cup. Since that sort of group at that point kind of disbanded, maybe even over the last sort of 12, 13, since that group kind of disbanded that would have been there for those wins. Is this as impressive a group as Munster have put together since then?
There's optimism there, there's no doubt about it. I think when you look at the forwards they have now and the options, they've a lot more depth. I think John Ryan is out injured at the moment, and they're a little bit short at tight head. But yeah, I think Niall Scannell coming back into that front row gives him a real solidity up front. I think he's someone who could push for a starting place with Ireland even when Rory Best is back. He started in Australia over the summer and was very, very good. So the forwards look very, very strong and robust. I think the issues they have is that little bit of cutting edge. They have a very quick back three, but sometimes it's getting the ball to them. And I know Joey Carbery will help that, but I think the midfield uncertainty, there's been no set partnership there for a number of years. I know Rory Scannell and Sam Arnold probably played the bulk of the games last year, but having Taute and Chris Farrell not available and not up to speed. Taute is back, but probably still a bit off fitness-wise. He was involved in the Cardiff game a few weeks ago and got a little setback.
Goggins comes in, does he? Is it?
Yeah, and Dan Goggins, to be fair, has been very impressive this year so far. And Sammy Arnold then has played 13. So will Rory Scannell come back into the side? So that's probably where some issues have been about distribution. That little bit of top quality cutting edge, that international standard. Incision, if you like, but look, they can only get better. I think the challenge of going to Exeter is very, very difficult because, as Charlie said as well, and I spoke to a few people. I spoke to Tom Hayes this week, who was captain there for a few years, John's brother. I met Dominic Ryan last night. He's been there with Leicester. It's a very difficult place to go and play. Some similarities to maybe playing Munster in Thomond Park, that they raise their game. They feel this is our home, this is our patch. We have a real good connection with our fans. And there's a lot of guys playing for Exeter who were released by other clubs over the years, and I think Rob Baxter has done an incredible job. Someone like Phil Dolman he played a handful of games for the Dragons probably 10 years ago. He moves to Exeter. He's been phenomenal. He's played in every position in their back line. He's a testimonial year, and he's consistently performing really well for him. So I think what he's done is fantastic, but it's a very difficult challenge. There's optimism there for Munster. Conor Murray this week is incredible news. When you've probably the best scrum half in the world, or very close to the top, if not the best, saying, I'm going to stay with this club for the next 3 years. Well, that's good. You can start continue that building process around someone like him.
Yeah, Rob Baxter's obviously being kind of mentioned in the ilk of potentially being Eddie Jones' successor. I'm not sure if you've been hearing anything from the RFU, Charlie, in terms of any real interest in Baxter. It seems that there wouldn't be the same relationship between obviously the clubs and the RFU as there would be between the provinces and the IRFU in terms of that succession plan, in terms of taking coaches under their wing. But perhaps the RFU should look at something like that, because it seems like he's a top-class international coach in wait.
Every time you go down to Sandy Park and speak to Rob and really listen to him, the prospect of him becoming England head coach, the next England head coach, becomes more and more attractive, because the way he thinks about things, how measured he is in every kind of situation he takes on, every post-match interview, that sort of thing. He is really, really, really impressive. Now, the recent kind of contract extension that Eddie Jones signed was for 2 years after 2019. Obviously, that's performance-based in the way England are going at the minute. That seems to be up in the air slightly, maybe, but he's got those 2 years written in, whereby he's going to kind of theoretically take someone under his wing and develop him into his successor. I think all of it's up in the air at the minute, to be honest, because of England's performances, and this autumn is going to be really interesting and pivotal, to be honest, as to how they approach 2019, because they need to win three of the games, probably, at least. Now, certainly Rob, the more you speak to him and the more you see X develop, and actually how how it's to develop as well, because they're branching out too. You mentioned his recruitment. He's just so savvy. He seems to pick up all the time guys who really want to prove a point. You mentioned Phil Dolman. Alex Cuthbert's come over this year. He was their only player that came in. So the rest of the squad's settled, and you bring in someone like Alex Cuthbert, ex-Lion, but somebody who has looked so hungry. I mean, he's making dents. He's defending really well. He's winning breakdown turnovers, which is crazy. And it just goes to show how good a manager Rob Baxter is.
Matty Williams was saying on the show during the week, Quinny, that losing bonus points is a good result for Munster here. Do you go with that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've been there before where you go away from home, going to France, going to the strong English teams, the away games, and you get a losing bonus point. At least it's something to build on. You can kind of hang your hat and say, well, look, we've taken a point. We're disappointed maybe to lose. Now, Munster won't be thinking that way, but you have to be realistic that if you're going to a place where it's going to be very difficult to win, well, then you've got to set your stall out and say minimum is a losing bonus point. It's not always easy to get that. Munster have to play really well tomorrow to get anything out of that game. I think if they start well, physically, Exeter are very strong. They're very compact. Their back rows, as Charlie was mentioning there, is very, very powerful. Don Armand, Kvesic, and Dave Ewers. They're big, robust, strong, 115, 120 kilo guys, which are powerful, and they get them over the game line. So, Munster have to play well. And look, if they got a losing bonus point, I don't think the squad or the players won't admit that, but I don't think that'll be a good result. Can they go and win it? Well, if they look at Leinster's template last year, when they went to Exeter, they held on to the ball, they upped the intensity, they brought the kind of pain threshold to a different level by just building phase after phase. I think it was 45 phases for Jack Conan's try.
Yeah, something like that.
So when you do stuff like that away from home, you're kind of saying, well, we're here in the mix. It doesn't matter where this is on, and we can go as far as you want with the pain threshold and maximise that. And I think Rob Baxter, chatting to Tom Hayes as well, he said that he puts a massive emphasis on obviously that detail that Charlie's talking about, that he can see and hear players talk about, but on fitness as well and work ethic. And so that's what Munster will face. So it'll be a real test, and we'll see, can they build on that positive, shall we say, performance last week away to Leinster, and be a bit more clinical if they get chances.
That's Saturday 3:15 kickoff for that one at Sandy Park. The other one we wanted to touch on to get your thoughts, Charlie, on Ulster against the Tigers at Kingspan Stadium tomorrow evening. We'll have that live with Conor Morris and Paddy Wallace, as you can see on your screen there. 5:30 kickoff. Jordan Murphy, 3 from 5. Charlie as head coach. What sort of rugby are Jordan Murphy Tigers playing? What can we expect to see from them?
I think they're still finding their feet. I think I was at that first game he was in charge against Newcastle, and they attacked brilliantly, but they defended terribly, and they've conceded 27 tries, which is the worst in the whole division, even though they're in 5th. So it's about connecting those two parts of their game. Actually, last weekend they had the game for Rob Horner, Twickenham against Saints, and in pretty grim conditions they defended okay. Carl Eastman was a really big part of that at 12, but on going on the road in Europe, no matter what sort of kind of transition phase Ulster are in, they're going to have to be a bit better, a bit steelier. It's whether they can do that. And their attack was firing. I mean, Eddie Jones has spoken about George Ford being the invisible man in the wake of kind of what everything that Danny Cipriani is doing has been on social media and has been up in lights. But George Ford is kind of slowly ticking back to his best form, which is really good. He's a fine playmaker in his own right, and one of England's very best. And with Carl Eastman, who is his mate from back in their Bath days, and Manu Tuilagi, they've got that midfield that's working a little bit. Dave Denton's been a really good addition up front as well. So their pack is looking slightly more tenacious and slightly more coordinated than it has been in the past. So that'll help them out, and it'll help to get George and that midfield on the front foot. But it's still a big leap going away from home in Europe to what they've been producing in the Premiership.
Yeah, and Ulster obviously have a good record at home against the Tigers. Racing and Scarlets, the other teams in that pool. Like we speak about the other what's a positive result for Leinster, what's a positive result for Munster. It sort of feels with that quality elsewhere in the pool that Ulster sort of need to win this one.
You have to win your home games to get out of the pool. It's a minimum. You win your 3 at home and you pick up something on the road. 4. We've seen teams get out with 3 in recent years when it's become very tighter and losing bonus points and all that kind of stuff. But minimum 3 at home and 1 away from home gets you in the mix. But I'm not sure how Ulster are just going to turn it on. And Leicester have been up and down themselves. So two
it's been
teams.
A weird season for Ulster, hasn't it? Like
it's been weird, yeah. Well, the good start was papered over by two late John Cooney penalties against Edinburgh and Scarlets, and you can take positives out of that, getting the result, but the performances weren't brilliant. And you think at home you have to be a bit more on the front foot and getting a bigger scoreline wins than late penalties. That one of them was fortuitous, the penalty they got in the end to win one of the games, and then they went to South Africa, won 1 and drew 1, and then they're on the back of 2 really bad losses. They were hammered in Thomond Park. It was a second string team largely. There was probably 5 or 6, 7 starters, but a lot of changes there. And then Ulster beat them for the first time in 58 years. Or Connacht beat Ulster last week. So it's just hard to know where they're at. Now, to be fair, they've had a lot of injuries and they've a lot of guys out, and hopefully some of them will be back tomorrow. But I think there's massive pressure on them to do well and get out of the pool in Europe. They haven't been there for a number of years, and this transitional phase, it's grand to say that, but they've an ability to win your home games, the minimum for Ulster, and we'll see. It'll be interesting, that one tomorrow.
Yeah, all right. We're going to wrap up the Heineken Cup chat there. Charlie Morgan, thanks a lot for taking our call this morning.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Charlie Morgan there on the line from The Telegraph. It's just such a fascinating weekend. I'm really excited for the other game that obviously we want to touch on before we wrap, is the Challenge Cup match between Connacht and Bordeaux Begley at the Sports Ground. It's a 3 o'clock start tomorrow. Oisín is going to be on commentary for that one for us. Oisín alongside Michael Swift with full and live commentary of that game. A lot of teams, Quinny, it seems, aren't going to, the Challenge Cup is... Some teams bother with it, some teams won't. It seems Mike Prendergast, I think, was saying during the week that actually he expects that Bordeaux
will take it seriously. Yeah, I saw that.
Isn't it?
It is interesting. They're a very good side, Bordeaux, and they've a lot of quality. So, will they take it seriously, though, the French?
I mean, I don't know. It strikes you as a competition that, from a Connacht point of view, if they do want to take it seriously...
This might sound crazy, but you know what? If I was involved in Connacht, I'd want them to do better in the Pro 14 than in the Challenge Cup this year, because it'll be hard. It's hard to win the Challenge Cup, okay? Because ultimately it's your second tier, but there's still a lot of powerful teams in there, and for Connacht to be going gung ho in both and trying to get consistency in the Pro 14 is the key for Connacht. They've shown a lot of excitement this year. Few vulnerabilities, but certainly playing exciting again, comfortable on the ball. Their skill set is good, and Andy Friend deserves a lot of credit for that. But for them to qualify for the Heineken Cup next year, I think has to be a major focus. Given the announcement this week of the new ground and the plans to do that, and where they were a couple of years ago, winning the Pro 12, I think getting back into Europe would be massive for them. So it doesn't have the same significance, the Challenge Cup or the Heineken Cup.
Is it harder to
like
win,
it or not?
Is it harder to win the Challenge Cup or the Pro 14?
It can be, because I think it depends. I think you need a fit squad, you need a run of luck with injuries, you need your best players available, and being able to play your best players in both competitions means having a lot of depth in your squad. So that'll be the challenge for Andy Friend. Does he make changes and rotate guys? And then you've guys chomping at the bit who want opportunities. But he's got to manage his way through this. They'll want to win, of course, and I think like that, anything, people will be excited with Bordeaux coming there tomorrow. It's European rugby. But I think for me, getting in through the Pro 14 would be a bigger, more significant achievement. You know, it's look, they could win the Challenge Cup for sure, and it's a chance to get your hands on a trophy. But if I was them, I'd love to get them qualified for Europe through the Pro 14 and be in the mix for the playoffs. There's no reason why they can't, given what we've seen the last few weeks.
There's plenty of excuses coming in from the English ahead of this weekend in the Champions Cup. Just to quickly touch on Eoin slot in the Times, there's a collection of them. He does say, however, that Leinster could win a Six Nations, let alone a Champions Cup. But Dai Young, he quotes as saying, "Can we rotate the squad as much as their opponents Leinster this weekend? No, we can't. It's a simple fact." Jordan Murphy, talking about Ulster, says the Pro 14 generally tend to get a rest a couple of weeks out and get bodies fresh. And Rory Best has been able to train and rest and really target the Champions Cup. While Rob Baxter says Munster have been preparing for this game for 3 weeks, so you can basically copy and paste that to the aftermath when all three sides lose this weekend. Eddie O'Sullivan, though, going two-footed into the English sides in the Times as well this morning. So despite the grandiose view that they have of themselves, England's Premiership teams have, Saracens aside, been European failures over the past decade. And he goes on to say what we've seen and heard over the last 11 years has been typical bully boy tactics. As soon as they stopped getting their own way, they looked for excuses. And as I said, there are the three big excuses that you're going to hear this weekend.
They're the excuses, but I think a team like Exeter are a team that don't look for excuses and don't make excuses. And they're probably best placed, themselves and Saracens. Saracens have a quality squad, but Exeter have a team of depth. They have a lot of quality and depth in the squad, guys who can chop and change a little bit, and maybe the others are giving out a little bit, probably don't have that same quality and depth. And what can we do? There is an envy there. But look, you go back 3 years ago when there was 5 English and 3 French in the knockout stages of Europe and no Irish, and it was over for Irish teams. So rather than kind of complaining and giving out and stuff, I know they have to deal in reality. And the rotation system is the envy of all these people. I think they're not doing it in a critical way. I think they're envious of being able to rotate. Like I said, Cian Healy, Sean Cronin and Tadhg Furlong, they are as fresh as anything this week. You know, and that's phenomenal to have a British and Irish line tight head, being able to get a rest last weekend against your biggest rivals in Ireland, and he's coming back now fresh as a daisy. So that's just the way the system is.
Yeah. Bunch of comments coming in, and we'll have some contenders for these tickets, which we'll let you know about very shortly. But one thing sort of dominating the conversation on YouTube, Quinny, started off by F. Bellew here. I don't know if it's the F. Bellew, but lads, will you pump that rugby ball behind you? It's wrecking my head every morning. Reminds me of finding a ball in the garden after ages and not knowing where the friend of the pump is.
This one, is it?
I don't know, is it that one or this one?
Tommy will pump them up for us.
The friend of the pump. Is that an expression? Yeah, I presume they're talking about the nozzle.
Yeah.
Graham Gallagher, hashtag pump it up. Dermot O'Donovan, yes, please pump up that rugby ball. Doing my nut it is.
Jesus.
And Conor Whelan finally here says, wow, can't stop staring at the flat rugby ball. I better get off doing some work before getting drowned at my kids' rugby training later on. I mean, that's what's, you know, you just, there's no kind of people gets people chatting of a morning. You don't have a pump handy?
I don't, I do not.
Sure, look, we'll tackle that one later on.
You'll be blowing a good bit of wind some weeks about Leinster, so put your mouth around it there and start pumping it there. Is that right on?
Oh, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Oh, look at this. Don't leave me hanging.
He's a Connaughts man. Yeah, Connaughts man. Living in that flow.
Pull that fella's mic again, will you? That's right, Quinny. Thanks a million for that. Enjoy the rugby over the weekend. Thanks a million for coming in. We're going to take more from Limerick last night. We'll pump up our rugby balls here. Brian and Keith Wood talking about Joey Carbery's start in Munster.
How long does it take for this to become Joey Carbery's team? Or do you want it to be Joey Carbery's team? Because I've seen some of the analysts this week saying, oh, it'll probably be March, April, even after the Six Nations by the time he's firmly established himself. In a way, like, if you're Conor Murray and you're at his stage of his career and you've only won one Celtic League 7-8 years ago, like, that's another wasted season if it takes 5-6 months for Joey Carbery to have the impact they want.
It's not just about Joey Carbery, and we can, you know, the second we get into the media, we can always go, it could have been Joey against Johnny or whatever it was. The games never work along that fashion. We have to be careful about not making it about one person that comes into it. He has to integrate within Munster. Munster has to integrate with him. What I've seen in the last number of weeks, and I was delighted he was picked again, because there is a sense of confidence that comes to a guy. I think his handling as a 10 is without peer in the country. I think he is a better handler than Johnny. I think he's better hands. He's not a better player than Johnny, not by a long stretch. But what he does have is an ability to trust his hands to do things that are on the gain line that are very, very tough. And
he's an instinctive player,
yeah.
I think, way more so. Johnny's become more instinctive, but I think Joey just plays heads up, and he's so reactive. And I think it's very exciting as a centre to play outside that, but there's a big element of the unknown, because I don't think Joey Carbery doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's got such incredible footwork and such great vision that he can get himself out of a spot way more with his athletic ability and his intellect than lots of other 10s.
Is there anyone you played with at 10 that you could compare?
Jeremy Staunton years ago was a bit like that. He was more difficult to play with, because you really, at least with Joey, I think he's another level where he can spot something and then make a decisive play in a split second, where I don't think Jeremy quite had that ability. And it's what Joey needs to do is he needs to be able to control different components of his game. So that part of his game we know he has, but when a game's going against you, when you need to get a momentum swing in your favour from nudging the corner, he did some good stuff at the weekend. To be able to do that, the way Rog controlled games, but the way he kept his pack going forward, like that has such a huge positive impact on a forward pack.
I remember I played with Jeremy in 99 or 2000 when we played against Connacht, and I hadn't seen him. I'd seen him in training, but he wasn't getting much of a run. He got picked, and I played with him in that game. We beat Connacht by 50 odd points, and I had never played with an out half that played like he had. It was absolutely amazing, and he had the most extraordinary talent and never seemed to get a run of games at a high enough and hard enough level to be able to make that kind of part and parcel of it, because I would get it, because he would do different things, because he normally had time when he was playing at a lower level. You don't have any time. And that's the difference with Joey, is he seems to have time even when there's none. What I liked about the last couple of weeks is when he got the ball and he was moving the ball wide with this beautiful, crisp, tight pass. The next player was doing the same. It's bloody infectious. If you get thrown a bucket of rubbish, you throw rubbish on. When you get this beautiful ball, and suddenly there's another 15-metre pass, suddenly Munster, we were complaining about the lack of width. My God, you've width in 2 passes, because this is what the guys are training with all the time. But what it isn't, and again, it's not just about Joey. He comes in, he's now the guy in the jersey. The other players that are playing 10 just have to get their act together. They have to get their chance. They have to out-train Joey every time training is on. They have to raise their standards. So it isn't just about Joey, because we always know the old saying, you're only ever an injury away. So the standard of the players have to raise to get it. It's the same with Albie Mathewson. None of the players thought they were going to usurp Conor, because there's no way they were going to. The gulf was too high. But Albie comes in and his standard is very different, and it's much closer to Conor's than the guys ever were. They have to improve their standard if they want to be number 2 or number 3 in Munster now. And that's been a really good selection. But so when you have good players coming in, the other guys have to raise their game.
Yeah, Keith Wood focusing in there on the games this weekend. That was some of the chat from the University Concert Hall in Limerick last night. We were at our very latest Heineken Off the Ball Roadshow. We have exciting news coming for you as well on our next one, which will be in November. And there will be very exciting news coming about that.
Jeez, if only there was a big game happening in November that I could almost think about some clues. Are Munster or Leinster playing, or is there internationals on in November?
But in terms of the guests lineup, there's exciting news.
Is there a country with which produces a lot of rugby legends? I think I actually know nothing about this.
No, and I don't know where you're
it's
quite.
Pretty obvious. It's not just like
really
All Black legend.
I mean, potentially, but not what I'm getting at with this one.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
The All Black legend falls under the more big names TBC.
Okay, fair enough.
But there is a name that has been absolutely confirmed, and we'll bring you that news over the next few days, I would hope.
When?
Next week, maybe.
Right, okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Right, a few comments coming in between today and last night's show down in Limerick as well. It's a couple of interesting bits and bobs for you that we wanted to bring your way, and here's a bit of a flavour of them, beginning with Colm Core, who's in touch with us on the Twitter machine, and he says a rare opportunity to see a full strength Leinster in the RDS. I mean, never is this a bit of a joy, but the other tournament is the column short story there. This is from Fionn Leahy on Twitter. Leinster's back row, frighteningly good and a glimpse at the future. Ireland's World Cup back row, he asks. O'Mahony offers great leadership qualities, but Van der Flyer is a mountain of a man whose work rate is phenomenal.
The irony of that is it's probably going to be 2 Munster men packing down in Ireland's back row.
Yeah.
Like, Conan's not going to displace Stander.
You don't know.
Van der
You
Flier's
really
not going to displace Peter O'Mahony. Like, they could. Like, it's an international. It's obviously a test standard back row.
I do believe that both of those things are possible.
They're possible. I shouldn't have said it with the certainty.
I think in terms of those quality, and Conan's only relatively new on the scene and will make, his curve will continue to rise pretty steeply.
It will, but it won't rise in time to displace CJ Stander, who's...
In terms of the World Cup?
In terms of the World Cup.
Maybe that's fair. Cathal Murphy has been in contact with us on Twitter. Sounds like the ideal night. Some lineup of international players on the pitch. I mean, I think that's a play for these babies here, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, it is.
Tommy's going to announce that on Twitter. Best commenter today is going to announce that on Twitter at about 10:30 or thereabouts. So if you've been in the mix on the hashtag this morning, keep an eye out on that.
On Off the Ball. Like, you can follow Tommy as well, but he's going to announce it on the Off the Ball account.
His Twitter handle is just too complicated to even give you, but I'm sure if you Google it, he's Tommaso Rooney. Like, you get into all sorts of spellings and that kind of stuff. But
consonants everywhere.
Listen, that's another one here on Twitter. This is from D Walsh. Asher, what else would you be doing on a rainy Friday evening and
watching the late really,
and wet Friday evening, I'd say as well, to be fair?
Yeah, it will be.
Oh really? Yeah, you'd be a late man, would you?
No, of course not.
I'd put you down for a late man. I know. Kigo on Twitter says, going in with a losing mindset is dangerous. Quinlan would never have gone into a game with that in their minds. Munster showed up last weekend. They need that and a bit of Conway-esque magic to get close to Exeter this weekend. Cara O'Shea, meanwhile, has been in contact with us, and Cara says, Bod, Raj, what a tonic last night. Woke up this morning still laughing at all the stories. Ronan O'Gara, Biointerest getting off the ball. The tears were real. Thanks for the laughs. If you haven't seen it or heard it, I would highly recommend at some point creating a couple of hours in your day. I mean, if you're at work and you want to sort of pass a bit of time, you've nothing else to do, lash it on. It was a great old laugh. It's up, the full thing is up on the Facebook page and on YouTube. Who else is in touch? Ger Lawton says, oh, Raj, hilarious, always a box office guest. Honesty is the best quality in an interviewee and he oozes it. Hashtag tears in my eyes.
Yeah, he is fantastic. He really is. It's like such a natural sense of humour, and of course, rising fashionably late helps that. The anticipation was real.
Even when he sat down, he had that twinkle in his eye where he had been listening to the show on the way up, and he said when he sat down, so this was about a half an hour in, he said, been a bit serious up to now, hasn't it? Let's have a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
Sean Clancy, Raj on fire. Hashtag you James Blunt. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm with you now. That I almost when I read that the first time, I didn't get that at all. You're looking at me in a way that you don't get it either.
Blank expression for me. What is that? What?
He mentioned a word last night that I really shouldn't have done.
I get it.
Rhymes with
yes.
James Blunt.
I get it now. He said see you next Tuesday.
Evan Quigley pointed this out, and this comment was so good it earned him a place in the final of our special edition crappy quiz. In fact, it was so good he ended up winning the tickets to the game. Rod shows up 40 minutes late, dressed like a PE teacher, who did a bit of geography every now and again. Hashtag OTB HRC.
Yeah, very accurate.
So that was a bit of a flavour of what's coming in. We do want to remind you as well that we've a really cool competition for you. We're calling all students with this one. We've teamed up with Vodafone X to fuel your passion for sport by giving you the chance to join Team Off the Ball for a week. You get to see what happens behind the scenes. You're going to attend a press conference. You can help report on a match, and you may even feature as a co-host of a show. If that wasn't enough, you'll also receive an iPhone 8 with a year's subscription to Vodafone X Sport, giving you access to 7 dedicated Sky Sports channels. To be in with a chance to win that, submit your demo tape and your details to offtheball.com/Vodafone X. So you're trying to demonstrate to us what an amazing sports reporter you are, and if Snapchat or Instagram is something that you're particularly savvy at, it may well be something for you.
Or I would suggest in your entry kind of show yourself making a cup of coffee to the best of your ability. Adrian would be very sort of strict on that sort of thing. First thing you do when you come in here on work experience is you're kind of put to work on the coffee machine by Adrian Barry, and if it's not to his liking, it's game over for you.
That is not true, but I mean, as always, Owen, it wouldn't be a week where me or my comments
you did ask me to make a cup of coffee before, and you were like, take the cup away from the machine at an exact certain point when the milk.
I mean, that is just giving you a bit of guidance on how to make a good bit of coffee.
Well, maybe that's it. And do you know what? I benefited from
it. Right. Delighted to have you along with us this morning. Thanks for joining us on the journey. We're going to talk to you again on Monday from 7:45. We've packed shows coming your way over the weekend. You can hear Eoin on Pat Kenny in a couple of minutes. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.